Hey you guys, welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. This week I have some really yummy meals to share with you, and a lot of them were new recipes that I was trying out for the first time, and they were definite winners in this house, so I think you will enjoy them as well. They're all very budget friendly and family friendly, so I think you guys will all enjoy them. If you're new to my channel, make sure you're subscribed. I do upload What's for Dinner videos every single Sunday, and I would love to have you give this video a thumbs up, and let's go ahead and get started with the meals for the week. First up this week, I am making some chicken and biscuits. This was a new recipe for me. I had never made it before, but it was a really simple recipe to put together, and I think you guys will like this one. I just found it off of Pinterest, and I will have the original recipe linked down below. I did tweak it a little bit just because you guys know I never follow recipe to a T. I always have to add my own little thing to it, but I am just starting off by cutting up one whole yellow onion into small pieces. And then I'm just cooking these onions up until they are nice and translucent. I am cooking them in a little bit of butter and olive oil. The recipe called for 4 tablespoons of butter, but I just felt like that was a little bit much, so I just did a little bit of olive oil instead. And then I did go ahead and season the onions with a little bit of salt and pepper. For the chicken in this recipe, I'm just using 3 small chicken breasts that I had cooked in my Instant Pot, and I'm shredding them up. I just seasoned them with a little bit of salt, pepper, and garlic powder. You could also cube your chicken up. It really is just personal preference, but just go ahead and cook 3 chicken breasts. For the seasonings in this recipe, I'm just using 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I'm also using about 3/4 of a teaspoon of oregano, as well as 3¼ teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And then I did do a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, as well as a little bit of garlic powder. I did tweak the seasoning to my liking, but I will have the original linked down below if you would like to follow that. And then I did go ahead and add a little bit of extra butter since I had not added the full amount earlier, and just let that melt in. Once that butter had melted, I'm just adding in 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, and then I'm adding in the vegetables. The recipe actually called for like carrots and peas that were all fresh, but I did not have any of that, so I just went ahead and used this bag of mixed frozen veggies, and that worked just fine for this recipe. So I'm just kind of letting those cook into this mixture. Once those veggies had started to warm up a little bit and soften, I'm just adding in 3 cups of chicken broth, and I did add that a little bit gradually just to have that flour thicken it just a little bit. And then I'm just adding in 1 cup of whole milk, as well as all of that shredded chicken that I had shredded up earlier. And then I'm just going to let this simmer for about 5 minutes while I get all of my biscuits mixed up and ready to go. So for the biscuits, I just have about 4 tablespoons of butter here that I'm melting in the microwave, and then I'm going to be adding in all of my dry ingredients. I have 2 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, and then about 1/2 teaspoon of salt that you just throw right in there and get all of those dry ingredients mixed together. And then I'm adding in 1 cup of whole milk and mixing that into the flour mixture. The recipe does say to not overmix it. You just want to mix it until the flour is basically wet. You just don't want to overmix it. That's pretty important for this step. And then the recipe here actually called for some Parmesan cheese. It called for about 2 cups, but I opted to use a Colby and Monterey Jack blend instead. That's just what I prefer. I'm not a big Parmesan person, and I thought they turned out great. So you can do what you want, but you can either do the Parmesan or you can go ahead and do cheddar or something, but that is just what I did, and I'm getting it all mixed together. And then I am just dropping these biscuits right into the pot with the chicken gravy mixture. I kind of pressed them together to make biscuits to some extent, but they're definitely not perfect. I just kind of threw them on there. And here, if you don't have a Dutch oven, go ahead and put the chicken mixture into a casserole dish, and then you can put the biscuits on top in there. But I have a Dutch oven, so I can throw this right into the oven. And then I just baked this in a 450-degree oven for about 10 to 12 minutes. And when it came out, I just put a little bit of melted butter right on top, and it came out super good. This was a super delicious comfort food meal. This next dinner is one that I have been making for a really long time. I found the recipe on Pinterest. My sister sent it to me, and it's a really good one. Totally a kid's favorite. So if you have young kids, this would be something that they would really enjoy. It's just like a sausage pasta. It's super simple to throw together, and it tastes really delicious. But I am just starting off by cutting up 1 large onion and throwing it into my big pot. So for the sausage, I am actually just using a venison sausage. We recently just had some venison made into some sausage. So this is just like a Polish sausage, and I'm just cutting that up. But the recipe actually calls for like a smoked kielbasa, but I have used so many different types of meats in this one, and it turns out perfect every single time. I've used brats before. I've used just like a cheap ring sausage. I've used turkey sausage. You name it, I've probably used it in this recipe, and it turns out really good every single time. So just go ahead and use what you like. Once you have everything cut up, I'm just turning this on to a medium heat, adding in a little bit of olive oil, and then I cook this all for probably about 5 or so minutes until the onions were translucent in color and the sausage is cooked all the way through. And then once those onions are pretty much cooked all the way, I'm just adding in a big scoop of minced garlic. You guys know I always use the jarred stuff, and then I let that cook up for about a minute. I'm going to have this original recipe linked down below, but I do tweak the measurements just a bit. I am adding in 1 can of petite diced tomatoes. I'm also adding in just over a cup of milk. I believe I used whole milk on this night. And then I'm also adding in 2 cups of chicken broth. I would say actually go ahead and add about 2.5 cups, but I was out of chicken broth, so I added a little bit of water instead. And then I did also add in about half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of pepper. Once this mixture has started to warm up a bit after adding in all of the liquids, that's when I like to add in my noodles. For tonight, I am just using some bow tie pasta, but my favorite is to actually use the mini farval pasta. That's our favorite. I feel like it just cooks really well with this recipe. And the nice thing about this one is it's just a 1-pot dish, so it's super easy. You're going to cook the noodles right in this, and it's going to take about 15 or 20 minutes. You'll know it's done when the noodles are nice and soft. And then I like to just add in a little bit of shredded cheese and let that melt in, and that is about it for this really easy dish. Definitely a family favorite and very, very kid approved. Next up, I am just making a simple chicken stir fry. I just wanted something nice and light on this night, and this sounded really good. And I didn't do very much meat. If you want to do a really meaty stir fry, go ahead and use 2 chicken breasts, but I wasn't feeling like a ton of meat, and my husband isn't a huge meat eater, so he's good with just a little bit. So I am just cutting up 1 chicken breast into thin little strips and throwing them right into my pan. And then I'm just cooking my chicken over medium-high heat with a little bit of olive oil. And of course I had to season it up with just a little bit of salt, pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder. I probably cooked the chicken for about 5 or so minutes until it was completely cooked through, and then I'm adding in my vegetables. I opted to just use some frozen vegetables just to make it super quick and simple. I'm using a California blend vegetable mix, and then I'm also using some fine green beans. The green beans are my favorite for stir fry, and I cooked these up for, gosh, I don't even know how long, probably about 5 to 7 minutes, but I mean, it's going to depend on how you like your veggies. Some people like them more firm and some people like them a little bit softer, but I just got those cooked up to my desired consistency. And then for the stir fry sauce, I am putting in 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and mixing that with 2 tablespoons of cold water. Mix all of that up together before adding in the rest of your ingredients. For the soy sauce in this recipe, I am just using some Kikkoman brand soy sauce. This is my favorite and the one that I always pick up from the store. I'm adding in about 2.5 tablespoons. I would say between 2 to 3 depending on your personal taste. I added in a little bit of olive oil as well as about 1/4 cup of chicken broth. And then I did go ahead and add in a little bit of sugar. The recipe actually called for honey, but I have my daughter who is eating this and she's under 1, so I wanted to just do sugar. And then I did add in just a little bit of crushed red pepper and a little bit of ginger and got all of that mixed together. I will have the recipe that I was kind of following. I didn't follow it to a T, but I just kind of went based off of that and tweaked it to my liking. You guys know I always do that. And then I'm just adding this right on top of the veggie mixture and letting that cook for just a couple of minutes until it thickens. And that's it. It was a really super easy and delicious stir fry. I highly recommend this sauce recipe. Next up, I am making a buffalo chicken pizza. This was definitely one of our favorites for the week. Highly recommend this recipe. I just cooked the chicken in the slow cooker all day. I sprayed it with a little bit of olive oil and then I dumped in 2 chicken breasts. For the sauce, I am just using this medium wing sauce from Walmart. Super cheap. I did 1/2 cup. If you want it a little bit spicier, add more, or if you want it really mild, you can add less. But I would say about 1/2 cup was good. It wasn't too spicy or anything, it was about right. And then I did add in 1 tablespoon of ranch seasoning mix as well, and I did also decide to do some garlic powder for some extra flavor. My chicken breasts were frozen and it took about 4 to 5 hours on high in my crock pot, and then when it was all done I just went ahead with my hand mixer and shredded it up. I will say you want this chicken to be pretty well shredded. You don't want to have like big chunks of chicken on your pizza, so a hand mixer works perfect for this. Of course you could just use 2 forks as well, but I always take the lazy way out and use the hand mixer. For the pizza dough, I am using the KitchenAid pizza dough recipe. I will link it below. I did not show you guys how to make it. It's a super easy recipe. It's the one that I always use. I do actually have it in another video. I will go ahead and link that one if you want to see exactly how I make it, but it's a super simple recipe and I am just putting that right onto my pan for a normal pizza crust. Of course, you could do one from a store or something if you don't want to make yours homemade, and that would work just fine too. I did decide to add a little bit of ranch to the crust of the pizza just so it wasn't super dry. I really didn't do very much. I did a really, really thin layer of ranch before adding on the buffalo chicken. I probably used just over half of the buffalo chicken, so you could probably get by with just using one chicken breast if you wanted to, especially if it was a large one, but I just put the rest of the leftover chicken in the fridge and we had it with quesadillas the next day for lunch. I made like buffalo chicken quesadillas and those were so good. So this buffalo chicken is super versatile, but I'm just spreading a thin layer right on top of the crust. For the cheese, I decided to use a little bit of mozzarella on the bottom, and then I did Colby and Monterey Jack right on top. I feel like the combination of both of these cheeses just worked really well together. I definitely would do it this way again, but of course you could just use one or the other. It's just personal preference. And then I just added a little bit of ranch on top. Of course, you could use blue cheese if you prefer that with your buffalo wings. It's just personal preference. And then I just baked this in a 425-degree oven. I think mine took right around 20 minutes, give or take, until that crust was nice and golden brown. And then when I pulled it out, I did put a little bit of butter on the crust just for some extra flavor and to make it a little bit softer. I actually made this pizza for Kenny and I's date night. I've mentioned this before, but one night a week, Kenny and I will make a dinner after the kids are in bed, and this is what we had on this particular night. It was so good. You guys, this recipe is one that you're definitely going to want to try out if you like buffalo chicken, or even if you're not a big buffalo chicken person. This was so good. It wasn't overly spicy, but it had so much yummy flavor. The last recipe this week is actually just going to be a taco pasta. This is a recipe that my brother sent me seriously like a year ago, and I finally just got around to trying it, and it was so good, and it was also super easy to make. So if you need an easy meal, this would be an awesome one. And if you like tacos, that would be fabulous, because this is just like another little twist on tacos to make it a little bit different. But I am just cutting up about half of a yellow onion, and then I did half of a red pepper as well. I will have this recipe linked down below. The red pepper actually was not called for in this recipe, but it added a ton of flavor. Definitely would recommend adding a little bit of pepper to this. And then I'm just going to be cooking the onions and the peppers together in a pot with a little bit of olive oil, some salt and pepper, and some garlic powder. And I'm just cooking those until the onions are translucent and the peppers are a little bit soft. While your peppers and your onions are cooking, go ahead and get your shells boiling. I'm just using these small shells. I definitely feel like you would want a smaller noodle for this recipe, but you could totally use whatever you have on hand. No need to go out and buy anything new for this one. I actually had a pound of ground beef ready to go in my fridge that I had cooked earlier in the day. I was meal prepping and I just had it ready to go. Otherwise, totally just cook your ground beef in with your peppers and your onions. I would have just cooked all of that together and it would have came out perfectly fine. So that's what I would recommend doing if you don't have any cooked ground beef on hand. Once everything is completely heated through, you're going to be adding in your taco seasoning mix. I added in probably about 1/3 of a packet. I think the recipe called for 2 tablespoons, and then you'll also need 3/4 of a cup of water, and then let that come into a simmer before adding in all of your cooked noodles. Add in those noodles, and then we're also going to be adding in the salsa. For this recipe, I used a very mild salsa. It was just Great Value brand, and I added in about a cup of that and then mixed everything together. I should also add that I cooked up the whole box of the shell pasta, but the recipe actually only called for half of a box. I would say I actually used about 3/4 of the noodles that I cooked, so I would just say add what you want. Of course, everything is just, it's up to you. You're the cook in your own kitchen. And then I did add in about a cup of shredded cheese. I used a Colby and Monterey Jack blend. And that's it for the super easy taco pasta recipe. Definitely recommend this one. Easton really liked this and Brinley really liked it as well. It wasn't too spicy or anything, but it was a nice little different take on tacos. I just decided to pair ours with a nice little side salad because I have been loving having all of the fresh veggies. This was right after we had went to the grocery store and we finally got some more fresh produce. So I don't know if any of you guys out there can relate, but I am like struggling that second week when we are not going to the grocery store. It's just so not like us to not have a lot of fresh produce on hand. So I have been really enjoying side salad lately. Well, that wraps up this What's for Dinner video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it gave you some meal ideas and inspiration for your week. As always, if you have a favorite recipe that you would like me to try out and feature in a future What's for Dinner video, make sure you leave it for me in the comments down below. I would love to try it. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
As a young girl, it feels we're mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free.